Let's just wait for another 5 minutes, and I think we can start the session. People will start joining.
Yes, sure.
Okay, once the count is around 10 or 12, we can start this.
Yes.
Gayatri, Niharika, you can call your teammates and ask them to join the call. Gina, please call your team.
మైకి లోపలికి వెళ్ళు వెళ్ళు లోపలికి వెళ్ళు లోపలికి వెళ్ళు
Akhil will start this exactly at 10:10. Whatever is the count in the group. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Akhil, yeah, we can start this, Akhil.
Okay. Hi everyone, good morning. Welcome to the session 2, which is on report writing. Today we'll be covering introduction to how to analyze some of the data you've collected and how to present it in the form of a report, and also discuss on the outline of the report that you can probably consider submitting to the party at the end of the internship. You all met me and Fatin last time in the session 1. We have Ishita also from our team joining in. Ishita is a political science graduate who currently works with JPAL South Asia in their research team. And prior to this, she also worked in rural Gujarat with women and on improving their livelihoods. I'll pass this on to Ishita to take this forward.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I couldn't catch what you said at the end.
Just you can take this forward.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Hi everyone. Akhil has already introduced me. So I think we'll get to know each other more as we progress through the presentation. So we basically let us give you an outline of how we are going to be conducting this session. Right. So Fatin will be presenting the initial part where he will be discussing data analysis for report writing, what are you going to do with the data that you have already collected, what other ways you can use to analyze it, things you should know about data and how to present it. And then I'll be taking over about how you can write a report, and then how to better your writing, how to research it, how to present it, things like that. So let's not delay further. Let's begin. Fatin, I'd like to pass it over to you. Also, few hygiene rules. One, that whenever you have a question, just raise your hand. We will immediately ask you to what's up. And also regarding, please keep your mics on mute when the speaker is speaking. Other than that, please feel free to ask any questions. There are no bad questions. Everything is a good question. This floor is open, and this is for you, for your learning. So any question we are happy to entertain. We would be happier if you asked us questions, and maybe we would also ask you a few questions. So don't worry about that. We all learners here. Okay. Yes, Fatin.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Ishita. So I think before we actually start with the session, why don't we ask our participants a few basic questions regarding their experience, what it has been on the field, and during this internship, what kind of data they have collected. Also, today we will be focusing on report writing with terms to an analysis on schemes. So it would also be very helpful if all of the participants would kindly tell what schemes they are working on. Also then, okay, let's start with the individual introductions and the schemes you guys are working on, and then I can probably add a few more questions.
Pravalika, Gayatri, any of you, do you want to start talking about the experience on ground? Kalyani? Kalyani, do you want to start first? Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, Tej.
Kalyani, Niharika, any of you? Reshma, do you want to speak? Yeah.
Yes, Akash. So as me and Asima, we both went to Penambur rural area survey, and we worked on health schemes. under both Indian health schemes and Andhra Pradesh health schemes. So we collected qualitative data, and we asked people that what are the schemes that you are all availing of. Like, is everyone know the schemes that is being implemented by the government? There are positive responses and negative responses too. Yeah, is there anything that I need to say?
All right, this was really good. I think, Ishita, is there anything you would want to add?
Just curious, like what was the response? Were they willing to answer your questions?
Yes, like we surveyed up to like 100 houses, 100 households.
Both of you? 100?
Households.
Yeah, but 100 is a lot of big number. Good.
Yes, we surveyed 2 weeks.
2 weeks, 100 houses.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. And out of 100, we got like 85 positive responses and 50 negative responses. Some people like they are busy in their own household works, and some people are not willing, and they are thinking that we are coming from a certain party. But we explained that we came from a college, we are doing internship, but they are not. Some people are not willing to answer. We got good positive responses, and that too we surveyed in rural areas, so people were really close to us, and they are saying their personal grievances, that when they went to hospital what were the problems that they faced. And they also said that they are not getting Arogyasri, and they also said some improvements that that government can implement. So people connected more with us as it is a rural area. Yeah. Oh.
So I was asking, mostly you surveyed women or men?
I surveyed mostly men, because mostly women, sorry.
Okay.
Only women. Like out of 100, I surveyed only 5 to 6 men.
Okay. Oh,
As I went to households, mostly men won't be there. I went at like from 9 to 11 a.m. So men are not there. Men were not there at home. Only women.
great.
And elderly above 70, we surveyed up to like 5 members.
Great. So you got a variation in your
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Nice. Okay. We'll hear more about your experience as we move forward.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Reshma. Anyone else who has worked on any scheme apart from health-related schemes would like to share their experience?
I think Kalyani also went on ground. Kalyani? Jeevana, do you know someone who is in the call who went on?
Ma'am, I would like to share my experience. Sorry, some network issues. I'm unable
No
to
problem.
talk.
Yeah, problem. Yeah.
Actually, I and Kalyani have worked on educational schemes as well as health schemes in urban area. Actually, mostly I observed that people are not willing to give answers to us. At first 2 days, we both went and we were literally asked some few questions like, are they aware about certain schemes like education Ammavadi scheme and everything? Like, are you aware about that? Are you eligible for that? If you're not eligible, what is the why you are not eligible? Some people are selling current bill, pension also they're not getting, and even like many complaints we get, and after that a few people are not willing to say anything. They are thinking like we ask for recording means like why you are recording, and if we ask we okay, if we start writing, like they're not willing to say. So we done a thing like we take the volunteers help, and yeah, that time they literally believed okay, this they spoken with us because due to the volunteers, they volunteer know that area no ma'am, so they like to say, and they literally it goes well after that when we interact, when we take volunteers help, and yeah, it goes well. We get many things, we get to know many things, like people are saying like due to some current bill and there's um, some other reasons they are saying like few things they're saying, like we are not getting due to current bill if they have four-wheelers, they're not eligible, it seems like. And some people are even volunteers not so good at that area, since they even not even saying certain people are eligible, even if it is about the caste, means SC people will get some eligible for some schemes, no ma'am. Even for those people also, they are not aware about that, and the volunteers are not even saying going to their houses and like, you are eligible for this, you can apply this, certain things they said. And before them only they said like, I think we got good response, and many negative response, many complaints also we got. That's it, ma'am.
Okay. How many people were you generally able to survey?
We went for 2 weeks, ma'am. For one ward, we were 10 people we were surveyed. 15 people we have surveyed, ma'am.
15 people we could effectively survey.
For one ward. Means like 100, mostly 100 people we were surveyed. Mostly
Yeah.
women, ma'am. Even men also we were interacted with, but mostly women are available at that time. 3 to 6 we surveyed. According to the availability of volunteers, we went there.
Right. So you aimed for 100 and you could survey 50 people. That's what you're saying.
No. We for what we were.
Ishita, we have wards in the city, right? Based on the municipality divisions. So she is speaking about municipality division. In each ward,
Oh, okay. In each
surveyed
ward, you
15
surveyed
people.
15 people.
Yes. So
Yes,
she
ma'am.
went through different wards based on the availability of volunteers. Is that right, Pravalika?
So total, including
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
how many could you survey?
So total she surveyed around 100 people is what she's saying.
Great. Okay. So that's good. And out of that, few people refused.
I think she and Kalyani were a team. Is it right, Pravalika?
Ha, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We both were.
Okay.
Okay, so what kind of data do you think you got out of the survey? Was it mostly qualitative, or was there also quantitative data in it?
I think both we got.
Okay, great. So before we move on, would anyone else like to share their experience and the scheme they have worked on?
I think these are all.
All right.
So one is urban and one set of people went to urban and one set of people went to rural. You have got both the responses, right? So I think this is all.
All right. Okay. So let's move on, Ishita. Can you switch to the next slide, please? So in this part of the presentation, we will be talking about the basics of data analysis, which is required for report writing. So all of you have gone to the field and come back with certain data. It might be qualitative in nature or it might be quantitative in nature. So once you have completed that data collection and you move on to the report writing process, in between you will have to make sense of that data you have come back. So let's talk a bit about that. Okay, so the very basic thing with data analysis are to organize the data that you have collected and classified that data. Now, like we explained in the previous session, that we have two kinds of data. One is qualitative data and then there is quantitative data. So when we come back with data from the field, we classify them separately as well. We classify qualitative data separately and quantitative data separately. So what is meant by organizing data? The data which you collect on the field, it's mostly raw data. So it's something which is not very clean and it's very difficult to make sense of. So when you have to write something like a report is a document which you can give to anyone. They will read the report and be able to make sense of it. For that, you need to first organize your data and then further you classify your data. So organizing data basically means highlighting important characteristics of your data so that it's easy for you to compare different sets of data. You can make it suitable for further processing. For example, in terms of quantitative data, we need to apply several statistical tools to analyze our data. So unless we have organized our data and we have classified our data into different sets, we will not be able to analyze that data. So what are some of the benefits of organizing and classifying your data? So as I already told, when you organize your data, it becomes easy for you to compare your data, further process your data. You will also be able to highlight what are the recurring themes. For example, from the experiences we just heard, we knew that there are positive experiences for schemes as well as there are negative experiences of your scheme. So when you're classifying your data, you can probably classify your data into two major sets. One would be positive feedback, another would be negative feedback. So this is a very basic example of data classification. What it helps us to do is it condenses your data. So you might notice that you have come back from the field, you were on the field for 2 weeks, you have interviewed around or spoken to around 100 people, and you have a diary full of notes and they are scattered. So once you classify your data, it will be condensed. You will be able to make better sense of it by probably transferring it into a laptop or a proper formal page. So some of the basics of data classification. How do we classify data? You can like I just said, you can classify data on positive or negative responses. You can also classify data based on geographical classifications. For example, in the urban survey, you guys have covered different wards of the same city. So while comparing data or making different sets of your data, you can also classify your data in terms of geographical locations. Another way of classifying your data is chronological classification. In this, you classify data based on the time period it was occurred in. So for example, if you are asking them about previous schemes and then current schemes, so there is a difference in occurrence of these schemes. These one set is present schemes, another set is previous schemes. So you can also divide it like that. Then there is qualitative and quantitative classification. So whatever data classification you will be doing, it would be either for qualitative data or for quantitative data. Quantitative classification is basically anything that has to do with numbers. So when we deal with numbers, it becomes quantitative classification. And when we are dealing with some kind of attribute or character of our data, for example, someone mentioned that there are a lot of missing beneficiaries. They do not get the scheme even when they are eligible for it. So this is a characteristic or an attribute of the data. So this is qualitative classification. Ishita, thank you. So let's talk separately about classifying quantitative data and qualitative data. Let's start with classifying quantitative data. So quantitative data, again, it is something to do with numbers. So when we are classifying data and we are classifying it on the basis of phenomena which can be measured in terms of numbers. For example, age, height, weight, price of things, how much money does someone earn. These are all quantitative data indicators. So when we are dealing with anything which has to do with numbers, we will classify it as quantitative data. So next thing is, what are variables? Variables. So, okay. The process of classifying quantitative data is also known as classifying by variables. So what are variables? variable is basically anything which you are studying. Age, if you are asking people what is their age is your variable in that question. Income can be a variable in the question. What are the, if they were getting the scheme and they are satisfied with it, if it's a question of for yes and no, it is a variable. There are two types of variables. One is continuous variable and second is discrete variables. So continuous variables is something which goes on and it's not possible for us to count these variables. For example, age. Age is something which we usually tell in terms of years. But if you want to mark exact age of any person, it becomes very difficult because I might be 25 years, 10 months, 2 days, 5 hours, and 4 seconds old. And the is there any issue with the chat, Ishita?
Sorry, no, please continue.
All right. So yes, I was saying I can be 25 years old, 10 months, 10 months, 2 days, and 5 hours, 4 seconds old. But the next second I will be older. So in terms of continuous variable, there are things which are very difficult to measure. Then we have discrete variables. Discrete variables are something which have exact boundaries which can be counted. For example, we can count the age of a person in terms of months or days. Then we can have a proper age which can be counted. For example, I can say I am 25 years old or I am 26 years old. One, is there a question? Hi, is there a question? Am I audible fine?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I briefly told you what is the difference between continuous and discrete variable. So for whatever data you have collected from your surveys, if it's in the quantitative form, you need to make sure that you decide on discrete variables for classifying your data. Discrete variables would be things you can count. Then we move on to applying some of the basic tools of quantitative data analysis. First one is a set called measures of frequency. So frequency is, in basic terms, how often something is occurring. So to measure the frequency or to measure how often something is occurring, we use counting, percent. It basically shows how often or how rarely something is happening. For example, I want to ask you how many people are getting this scheme in this particular ward. So if I get a count that 10 people are getting this scheme in this ward, then it becomes a measure of frequency. So anything which is telling you how often or how rarely something is happening in your data, that is a measure of frequency. And then we have measures of central tendency. I think most of us would have already studied percentages, modes, medians, averages in our mathematics classes. So those are measures of central tendency. What do I mean by central tendency is they tell you how much your data is spread. So for example, someone might have an income of around 100 rupees every day. Then there can be someone who has an income of around 200, and then there is someone who has an income of 1000 rupees per day. So we can take an average and say that this is the average income of the people I have interviewed. or on an average, these many people in my ward were getting the scheme or not getting the schemes. So this is measures of central tendency. We use this when we want to summarize our data. There are several advanced tools for classifying quantitative data, uh, which if you guys are interested, you can read up upon, and I would be very happy to share with you additional resources. But I think for very simple, for very simple research where we are dealing with lesser number of respondents, and we are making a mix of qualitative and quantitative data, measures of frequency and measures of central tendency will help you a lot while writing your final report. Then there is the last point of presenting the data. So how do we present the data? We have organized our data neatly. We have also classified it. We have decided on variables. We have also found how many people said what. We also know what was the average of the questions we have asked. We have also found the central tendency. So in order to present quantitative data, what we do is we make use of charts, graphs, and tables. Because we are dealing mostly with numbers, we'll put this data in terms of tables or pie chart, graph, bar graph, anything which is suitable for the data you are dealing with. Let's move on to classification of qualitative data. Okay, let's talk a bit more about data coding. So you might have heard this in the past as well, that we need to code data or data coding with terms of research. So data coding is something where we label and organize our data, and we identify different themes and relations between them. We use this mostly in the case of qualitative data. So a lot of you must have gotten a lot of qualitative responses with terms of people not getting schemes, or the benefits getting delayed, or some of the issues with are there with the scheme. You would have got a lot of points on the positive experiences of the schemes and the negatives. So what do we do with this data? So we have all this explanation in our notebooks. So we try to label and organize this data into themes so that we can make sense of it. So for this, we use something called thematic coding. Thematic coding is, again, dividing our data into themes. So for example, you can decide themes such as beneficiary negative experiences. So whatever are the negative experiences, you can try to highlight those phrases which are highlighting the negative experience of the scheme beneficiaries. And then further, you can see that there are several factors which contribute to this negative experience. For example, one of the negative experience might be that they are not getting the benefits on time. Second might be they are getting the benefits, but it's not up to the mark. Third, it might be they're not getting the benefit in itself. So this is all related to negative feedback on a particular scheme or a negative experience of the respondent you were speaking to. So this can be one theme. Similarly, you can find themes in your data and start labeling them. This helps us to conduct a thematic analysis of your data. So when you are making sense of your data, you will decide on codes. Codes are labels. You can use words, small phrases, or sentences. For example, I can make use of one code called cleanliness. And then any experience of any respondent which had to do with cleanliness will come under this. So wherever I would have written words like tidy, unclean, garbage, cleanliness, or it was not it did not feel safe, there was a problem of hygiene. Anywhere, if anyone has mentioned any of these words, I will put them under the label of cleanliness. That's one thematic code for me. Then when you're deciding on codes, there is a process called inductive and deductive coding. So inductive coding is something where you look at your data and then you decide what codes you will be using. So you have come back with all the data, all the interviews you have conducted, and you are trying to make sense of this data. You are reading it again and again, and then you come up with codes. Okay, one thing can be cleanliness, one thing can be positive experiences, which can further be divided into a lot of themes. Another theme can be negative experiences, and then you decide codes on them. Whereas deductive coding means you already have a set of codes, and then you assign those codes to the data you have come back with. So I might already have a set of questions in my mind regarding the performance of these schemes. Then I will decide on codes which are applying to my data. For example, I already have codes on timely delivery of an scheme. I have a code for beneficiary missing beneficiaries. Then I have an example, for example, a code on corruption in the process of availing the scheme. So then I already have, if I already have my codes and I'm trying to put my data into those codes, it's deductive coding. Finally, once you have coded your entire data, you need to put your data in coding frames. What is a coding frame? Coding frame would basically serve as a basic outline to what you are making out of this data and putting into your report. So if we are talking about schemes and people's experience of these schemes, one thing which one might probably think of doing is, okay, I will divide this entire data into positive experiences of this scheme and negative experiences of the scheme. In positive experiences further, I will tell the success stories. I will tell how satisfied people are. Any suggestions or recommendations on making it better. Similarly, for negative experiences, I will try to figure out what are the bottlenecks. Where is the actual issue which is resulting into people having a negative feedback? And then again, your suggestions or recommendations on how this can be improved. So this is the basic outline which you want to draw from the data you have collected. You will be making codes around this, finding relevant data according to those codes, making a list out of it, and then you will put those codes in coding frame. Coding frame is the actual structure which you want to take out from your collected data. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so I have told you a bit about quantitative classification, qualitative classification, because quantitative classification is dealing with numbers, and basically you deal with how many people said what was the average, what was the percentage. There is a less chance of subjectivity into it. Whereas when you are dealing with qualitative data, it's very easy for us to have our own personal biases, or sometimes because we have not interacted with a larger or more representative sample of the people we are supposed to or we are trying to study, there can be biases in qualitative data, especially the analysis of qualitative data. So like I had also mentioned in the previous session, we should always make sure to get rid of our biases and preconceived notions when we are dealing with any kind of research, especially qualitative research. So there are some pointers which you need to keep in mind to make sure that there is minimum bias in the analysis you are conducting with your qualitative data. So I spoke about the process of making codes and coding your data. When you're coding your data, you have already conducted surveys in groups. So it would help if multiple people can code the data. Same data is being coded by multiple people. So different people will be coming up with important pointers which are arising from this data. And if a lot of you come up with the same codes, you will know that yes, this is something which is relevant and it should be included in the analysis of my data. Then there is another measure which researchers use, which is have participants review your results. So I understand it's not very feasible in the setting you are conducting your research in. You cannot ask your participants to review your results, but you can definitely have a smaller sample of your result and then get it reviewed by your colleagues or by your friends who are working with you. You can also take help of people from the organization you are interning with. And then you can get your sample of your result review so that you know you're going on the right track. Then another very important point is verify with more data sources. So when you're talking about positive or negative experience of any scheme or performance of any scheme, you will definitely be able to find a lot of secondary data on this. So before you are writing your final report and putting your data analysis of your data into it, you need to verify this with a lot of various different data sources. You can make use of various papers, government websites. I think Ishita would be covering that in a lot of detail very soon. So here you need to remember that you need to verify your data with different sources and then always check for alternate explanations. So whatever you have obtained from your data, always try to think, is there some other reason for this apart from what I'm thinking? If you can account for all the reasons, like if you can be sure that okay, this is the reason this had happened, there is no other possible explanation for it, then only you can be sure about the analysis of your data. If you have in your mind some doubt or some other alternate explanation, you need to include that in your writing while you are dealing with your data analysis. Finally, review findings with peers. Again, it's very important. I also mentioned it when in the second point. So in case you cannot have the participants of your survey review your results, you should always take help of your peers and the people you are working with to review your findings. So I think those were the basics of data analysis for quantitative and qualitative data you would be needing before you guys move into the report writing phase of your work. So let's stop here. If there are any questions, any confusions, I know this data coding process, it's a bit confusing. It might be a bit confusing. Also, I have tried to make it very basic and simple. So in data coding or anywhere else, if anyone has any questions or doubts.
Anyone, please feel free to ask. You can ask us at the end of the presentation as well, or any doubt you have, anything you want help with, like you've collected data already and you want to ask us how you would want to present it, you can throw it at us. We can brainstorm right now. Okay. Cool. We'll go move on to the how to write a report part, and then we can take questions. Okay. Also wanted to request all of you, if it's possible, could you switch on your cameras? Now, or especially when we are interacting, then that time would be great. But I mean, it'd be nice to get to see who's listening.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So let's start. Firstly, wanted to start with a disclaimer that there's no one way to write a report. So everyone has their individual style, everyone presents data differently, everyone has a different way of thinking. And also we are no report writing experts, but what we have put together is some techniques and systems and structures that has come helpful to us, and hopefully it will guide you in your report, and the final report will be completely yours. It will be your thought, your thinking, but just some structural and hints and guides that we want to provide you with that will help you write your report. Okay, so for every report you need to have a story. So after you've finished your data collection, that's what you've been doing since the last 2 weeks. You've spoken to a lot of people, you have read the scheme, and you've asked how this people are accessing the schemes, everything. You have so much insight into what's going on, but there is so much data, right? So then, as Fatin explained, you code them all into boxes, and in your head now you have a sort of a structure of how this is supposed to be, how things are supposed to things are supposed to look like. And then for your own convenience, even if it's a very straightforward report, introduction, how it is working, what the feedback has been, and end. But for that also, you need to have a story in your mind to be able to put it together, to ask the right questions. If you, for example, someone said they are doing um, a scheme on health, so health pretty straightforward. There are multiple health schemes, and you ask the respondents, are they using it, is the scheme accessible? So what is your story? Has there been an particular scheme which has been controversial, or people have been talking about it, or it is reputed to be a very good scheme, but are people, you want to check if people are actually using it, if it's actually useful for the people, if the implementation is all right. You want to check the pulse of the people, or you want to see that it is coming in handy, or you want to see if it has faced criticism, if the criticism is worth it. I mean, is it correct criticism, or is it just rumor? That's a story. So even if it's a straightforward report, you need to have a story in your head to be able to frame your report according to. So you'll have a tangent to follow if you know what your story is, and then you'll ask those questions, and at the end of it will be an interesting report to read as well as write. Right. Okay. So to help you build a story, if once you are looking at a scheme, you would want to break it down into what issue is the scheme actually trying to address, right? So for example, we'll here there's an example of quality education. There's poor quality education in government schools. There's a scheme for bettering the infrastructure. That's the scheme. So what the issue here is, why we need that scheme? Because there is poor quality of education in government schools. And then there's another underlying effect of the issue, which is that the parents are migrating the children to private schools, evidently because there is poor infrastructure, or there's no proper washroom facilities, or the teachers are underpaid and hence underqualified, things like that. So once you have these issues coming out, you know why the scheme was formed. So then you have a better grasp of what the story will be, and what the background of the scheme can be, why you are trying to analyze this issue, right? Okay, cool. So once you've coded your data, you have a somewhat an idea in your head of how you want the story to look like, which direction you're taking. You need to have a thorough idea what the scheme is about, what you're writing on, you mean to say through your report, what is the report trying to address, right? So before you go to the why of are the people responding to it, do they have access, how are they liking the scheme, is it is it usable, is the government, what the government feels about it? All of that, what the perception is, before that you need to know the scheme throughout, right? So few questions here are a few pointer questions that you can ask. Is it a state scheme or a national scheme? Has there been any controversy or incident or conversation surrounding this scheme? Has anyone, there are multiple schemes which are controversial. People say that, for example, the midday meal scheme where children were being provided midday meals, and there was a situation where some people were against providing eggs in the meal, some people were for it. So that there was a whole controversy surrounding that scheme. So then issues come up about what that means. Is nutrition important, or is religion important? Things, a lot of controversy around that scheme. So different schemes, some are on very non-controversial schemes, so that's good. But every scheme or the other, there obviously is some debate behind a scheme to form it. Like every scheme comes up because people need it, and there has been some problem why that scheme has been formed. So that's the background of this scheme. So is the scheme new? Some schemes are amendments to older schemes. So if there has been an amendment to a scheme that already existed, a policy that already existed, then why has an amendment come in? Was there something missing in the previous scheme, and now does the amendment solve it? That's another background to that. Then who is the target beneficiary of your scheme? So obviously, definitely, every scheme has a target. Is it lower income people? Is it women specifically? Is it children? Is it laborers? Whatever that is, who is the target and why? That's also important. All of these background information is important for you to firstly know the scheme inside out, and also then at the beginning, not too much, you don't want to give too much background, but one paragraph at least. You want to make this, condense whatever information you have learned about the scheme, and then present it in a short paragraph at the beginning, because context is very important. So all of these background will give you and your reader context to the scheme that you're reporting on. Okay. And then lastly, what is the public perception of this scheme according to secondary sources? So one, you have primary sources which you yourself have collected the data for. You have gone into the field and you asked your respondents what they think, and that's your concrete primary data that you have. But secondary sources are places from where you have, newspaper articles or op-eds or things, places where, or even in the parliament debates where people have raised issues about the scheme, or people have spoken about them, or you have interviews, or in the media you always have debates over issues. So there is a lot of areas in the internet you can, and print, and as well as news media, where you can see what the people are thinking about that particular scheme. So you know what your respondents think, and you should also know what the public perception of the media perception of the scheme is. So that gives you a sort of a background as to what the story is and what you want to be looking at. Okay, so this is important because one, that you already know what the background is also, but later when you maybe, suppose you're writing a finding of a scheme, and for example, let's say if the scheme provides subsidized fertilizers, and your respondent has said that yes, they are accessing the scheme, and they also have to provide they are getting the subsidy, but also have to pay some amount to the local panchayat. But you have read the scheme, and from that you know that that is not correct. They don't have to provide any other cost to the panchayat. So then exactly, that then becomes a very crucial finding for you, because you know the background of the scheme. You can, that was a very obvious example, but once you know the background of the scheme, you can place two things together. You can see that, is this going right, is this not going right? So having a background for your sake and for your reader is very important to establish the context of your story, of your report. Okay, so here are some portals where you can find information like information about this scheme. So the National Portal of India, it has all the policies and schemes that are formed by the government. We will share this slideshow with you as well. So you can write down the website as well. So you can access any scheme, everything, and see like the whole scheme will be there in front of you. But then there is the PRS website. So schemes are, I mean, there are clauses, and sometimes they're small, sometimes, but it's a lot of legal jargon that is there. So the PRS is a website I find really helpful. They and provide the scheme, they provide like a short synthesis of the analysis as well, and also sometimes they analyze the scheme. So you can go, we will explore one PRS website next in the next slide and try to see how they have analyzed the scheme. So it will give you like a sort of structure of how you want to go about it. And then there's the State Legislative Assembly website and the state issue. This is for Andhra Pradesh specifically. You can access this as well to get an idea of all the schemes that are there in our state. All right. So yes, so we are going to dissect this bill. Wait, I'll present my screen. Any questions till now? Please feel free to ask. Okay. So is my screen visible? So, right.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the PRS website, and this is a ordinance by the Andhra Pradesh. This ordinance was given by the governor, and this is on the Panchayati Raj Second Amendment ordinance, which is given the governor placed on in 2020. So look how they have presented the bill or the ordinance. So here they have like at the onset, before even like starting, they've given some key features. What are the key features? So the background behind, I'll give you a quick background behind what the scheme is. It's an ordinance which was given by the governor of Andhra Pradesh, and he basically, it meant that the state election commission, he wanted to change the eligibility criteria of the state election commission. There was a controversy that during COVID, the election commissioner had delayed the local governance and all the parties had gotten really very often. So the governor had given out this ordinance that changed the eligibility criteria, which then essentially meant that the election commissioner who was not eligible anymore, so he had to be re-elected then. So it reduced his term to 3 years, and basically it meant that the current state election commissioner would lose office, right? So then what happened was that later that SEC election commissioner, he filed a case against the ordinance in the High Court, and then that was accepted and he was re-established. But let's look at how they have presented the ordinance. They've given a few key features and then they come to issues to consider. So there's the removal of the election commissioner. That was a violation of the constitution, because you know that the election commissioner has to have total autonomy for the elections to be free and fair, right? So then so once you're violating that, you're basically violating the constitution. So that was an issue that was brought up in the court. It violates Article 14. Article 14 says that all people have right to equality. That's basically Article 14. And then this would violate Article 14 because the two commissioners, the one before and the one after, wouldn't be on equal pedestal because their eligibility criteria was changed. So he wasn't getting the same equality as the other person. That's why Article 14 was invoked. And yeah, our reappointment would affect independence of the election commissioner. So then at the outset, you know what the ordinance is about. They have provided the key features of it, and they provided the issues that are to be considered, the story to say. Okay. And then here itself, it provided what the verdict was. The AP High Court has struck down the ordinance. So in a condensed, very nice brief form, you know basically what the whole scheme ordinance is about. So a very nice way to present it. Then you go a little bit into explaining. So here they've given the background that the 73rd and 74th Amendment provided recognition to the local government, etc., etc. This is a little bit of background. And then in the next paragraph, they come into what the ordinance said and what was the events that occurred. Government notified vacancy, and then a new election commissioner was appointed. That's a little bit of background of the issue. So notice one thing here, everything has been cited. So this is the background. So this is pretty straightforward. So there's nothing to cite here, but you could obviously cite government, the bill that the 73rd and 74th Amendment here if you wanted to. And here, for example, so these 1, 2, 3, these are the citations. If I go to one, here, they've given the link at the end of the notification from where they got this information, the ordinance that was passed. All of these are the citations that they've used throughout the report. So citing everything that you are accessing is very important. Okay, so yes. So they've cited also the High Court. They've cited the newspaper article which talks about the High Court verdict. Then they've also cited the another newspaper which said that the SEC his tenure has been renewed. Everything they've cited. Okay. So that's really important when you're especially writing a report to cite all your sources, because otherwise if you don't cite something, firstly it questions your legitimacy, that from where have you gotten this information, and secondly for your reader also you need to provide them with references to follow up on, because if you don't want to write the whole thing, you can write a leading sentence where you talk about the major issue, and further details you can just cite and for your reader to go and check it out. Okay. Right. And also it's ethically important to cite other sources if you're borrowing from them. Okay. So key features, again, this is a very nice way to present the key features. They have key features basically where they have elaborated on the eligibility criteria about the SEC in the new ordinance, qualification that they have to, before it was okay if they only were a principal secretary, and now they have to be at the level of the judge of a high court. So these are, I'm not going into the eligibility criteria, but this is a nice way of presenting the eligibility and presenting the key features. You highlight the important parts and in short you condense what you want to say. Okay, so easy to read, easy to present, very straightforward. Then an issue to consider. So here now they are broken down. So this is really important when you're writing a report, and you'll come to it later as well when we are talking about writing style. We want the reader to be able to like see clearly and see what you want to mention, like it should come out of it. So suppose here it's very clear that they want to say the ordinance may violate certain provisions of the constitution. That's a big statement. They have put it in bold, and then later after that they have highlighted what that means, what they mean by that the removal of the SEC may violate the procedure and how that. So that you can later elaborate. And also one paragraph is one issue. The issue of violating the constitution, that's one paragraph. You don't include more than one issue in a paragraph, or if there are like two connecting issues, then maybe you can think of that. But one paragraph, one thought. That's the major takeaway from here, because otherwise it gets confusing if you bunch up number of issues and then you can't properly elaborate also on one particular thing, and it's hard for the reader to understand. So it's very simple. You just take one paragraph, take one issue, properly highlight it and elucidate it, and that's it. So that's how they have done it here. Every paragraph is about one issue, and they have given details, have cited everything. Right, all of these are different issues they've covered. And at the end, so this is also something you can do if your scheme is national or every state has a similar scheme. They've made a nice table and given like examples of a few other states and what the term of appointment of the SEC is there, what the qualification is there, and reappointment is there a provision, was there not, So it gives you a brief idea. So once you're talking about one scheme, you know what the scheme is and everything, but you don't have any reference point to compare it, right? Do you know if there's a better scheme to it? Do you know if there is something else they could have done better? You don't. So once you give, like, compare it to other states or even internationally, it gives you a nice idea, gives the reader a nice idea of, oh, this is what, like, here in Andhra Pradesh they were like trying to remove him from like make it to 3 years, but in other states all of them are 5 years. So that's gives you a point to compare with. Okay, so yeah, that's basically this. I'll go back to the presentation. Any questions here?
Yeah, I just have one question.
Yes.
So, you have explained, right, like for every scenario or for every problem, there will be a story where we need to write. For example, we'll take it as a description and the user story. And for example, given I am in the role of a surveyor who has done a survey on the public health in Andhra Pradesh. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you speak up a
Yeah.
little louder, please?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, this is better.
Yeah. So, you have just mentioned, right, for every scenario, for every survey, there will be a story where we need to present in a story format. For example, there will be a description on the user story, right? And for every survey, there will be three scenarios. One is positive, negative, and the neutral. So, is there any format or a model that we need to present?
Right. Thank you. Good question. So, no, there is no particular format per se. You can present your findings first and then come to the background and analyze it through there, or you can, whatever you want, you can do. But yes, as we go on to the presentation, we have created a sort of a draft format that could come helpful to you. We'll come to that later. But also, good question. So, when you are presenting findings, the positive, negative, everything, you want to have a structure. You want to, like, basically have one paragraph for the positive parts, one paragraph for the negative, then neutral. Up to you if you want to. Uh, so when we say neutral, what do you mean?
Some people might not decide, right, like they are okay with the scheme or they are not okay. Some people might be, right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, good point. So all of that comes under your findings. So I'll elaborate more on your question when we come to that part. All right, we are going to cover that. Okay.
Yeah, sure. And it will be helpful,
Ishita,
like,
you are on mute.
yeah, sorry, and it will be helpful if you look at the present survey and do it in a live case scenario so that the interns can learn a lot.
Yes, we will do that. We have some time reserved for that. 1 second, I think I've lost the presentation. Yes. Right. So now we have covered how to the presentation of a bill, how you could possibly sort of structure, and some tips on how you can present your information and how something that is lucid looks like. And now up to you how you want to present it, what information you want to present first. It depends on how you want to present your story, and we'll cover how you should present your findings in a bit. Okay. This is so when we are making policies, mainly what we want to do is make an evidence-based policy, right? Because suppose I am thinking of a issue that could be plaguing people. Maybe I think that girls are dropping out of after grade 8 because of patriarchy, because their families don't allow them to go out of their houses, and since they are growing, they're hitting puberty, their families are against them studying. And that is my opinion, and I think, okay, I'll make a scheme according to it. I'll give awareness workshops about uh, girls should study, things like that. But then an evidence-based scheme would be, once, so then I send out surveyors to collect evidence regarding the scheme. I ask them to interview girls about why they are dropping out of grade 8, and then that suggests the information that comes back is that issue is, yes, family is a issue, but it's secondary. The first primary issue is that they don't have toilets in the school, and that's why now they have started menstruating and they really need sanitation, and because of the lack of it in school, they can't they are dropping out of school because of lack of sanitation. Then my opinion was different. I was thinking on a completely different tangent, but the issue at hand is completely different. So that is why we want to make evidence-based policy. So similarly, for a report, you can have an opinion that, okay, this is working, this is not working, but you should also have evidence to support your opinion. And when you collect evidence, it shouldn't be biased by the opinion you already hold. It should always have open-ended questions that you can grasp other things, that just straightforward ask why you want this, and then opinion, the respondent who is actually supposed to be the beneficiary, their opinion comes to you. Then you know that was your opinion correct, or is there some other reason, and there is always like millions of reasons that can be. That is why it's really important to have evidence to support a report that you are trying to write. And sometimes you cannot always go to the field, you cannot always have ground level polls and analysis like you have currently. So in that case, you can take the help of secondary sources, and there is a lot of other people who've collected information, and you can analyze that data according to the question that you want to answer. All right.
Yes.
Okay. Any question? Does anyone have a question? Okay. So when you're writing, so when we say evidence, there are primarily two types of evidence. There's primary and secondary. Primary, as I said, is the evidence that you collect the one that you have already collected, the one that you are going to the field to collect, that you yourself have gone and collected. So data, primary source is data that you yourself have collected. So firstly, the very first thing about this data is that you have to define the sample that you have collected, because 100 is like, it's a pretty big sample if you're looking at a one ward, but if you're looking at the entire state, then 100 may not, like these 100 people may not think the same as another 100 people in a different part of the state, right? So that's why if you have sampled 100 people, you need to make your reader aware that who are these 100 people that you sampled. So when you say define, and also in anonymity of your respondent is extremely important. So when you say define, you basically talk about traits like how many women, how many men, how many from low income families, were they below poverty line, how many had ration cards, how many had Aadhaar cards, or basically want to define it for depending also on the question you're answering. If particularly referring to the last example that I gave, if you are particularly sampling women for um, women dropouts who have dropped out after class 8, so then you want to see that where they come from. Are they lower income families? What is their caste? What is, because that also, what is the class, those things also play important role in determining what their family mindset is, what and also which area do they come from, because different areas have different perceptions. So you basically you can't analyze all of it, or you cannot always make claims that, oh, because she comes from a lower income family, that's why she dropped out of it, because she does not have money. I mean, that's a very leading thing that you're saying, but so those claims you cannot make with a very small sample, but you should always refine for the sample that you've used, so that your reader is aware that, okay, this is the sample. Now the reader can make interpretation out of however they want to interpret that data. All right. So some questions that you can ask when you are trying to analyze. Fatin gave you a nice intro about how to code the data. So once you've coded the data, once you've put them into boxes, now you can ask these questions: that what is the popular opinion? What is the most thing that you've coded? Like, what's the opinion that appears in the code the highest? That will be the popular opinion. Which has the highest mean? What's the average? Which is the highest average? Basically, that's the popular opinion. Popular opinion can vary also. It can be divided into two different yes or no's as well. So basically, that your data will say what the popular opinion is. So how many, and then how many said the scheme is difficult to access? This can be how many of them said. So you're presenting graphs, and this is uh, helping you present your findings in a very nice way, that these many of my 100 people who I sampled, who are defined as the follows. These are from this particular region, mainly women, housewives from low income families, said these things about this particular scheme. And the major popular opinion was like 90% said, or 80 out of 100 said that this is yes to this, 20 out of 100 said no to this. How many said 50 said the schemes were difficult to access, 50 out of 100. How many said they benefited, how many said they didn't? All of these are findings. So this, you can have a finding section, and you can put all of these down as the findings from your primary source. And here specifically, you don't give your opinion. You just, as a matter of factly, put all of these, because your findings will speak. The findings will give what the idea is. You don't have to specifically say, oh, 80 people said that they can't access health schemes. That means that the health infrastructure is bad or something. That you can just give that 80 out of 10 people said this. You can't make leading claims without a bigger data set. You can't do that. So, but what you can do with your primary source is give what you have found. All right. Please feel free to ask questions, or maybe I'll ask a question now. Let's see. Who had done on the education? I think it was Reshma and Nasima, right? What was the popular opinion in your findings? Can you give like a brief outline of that? Hi, Reshma, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Yes. So from what I explained, can you give me like what was the major? What did people said yes to? What was the question that you asked? Can you tell us once?
Yes, ma'am.
Hmm.
As we work in the health schemes, we may. Oh, am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
We mainly ask them whether they have Arogyasri card. Arogyasri card is a health card in Andhra Pradesh.
Okay.
Okay, we asked them, and many people said that they are having, but they are not getting any benefits from this scheme. I mean, even though they went with the health card, the Arogyasri card to the hospitals, they are not getting any benefits to the card.
Okay. So, right. So then you have two findings here. One is that you ask them how many of them have the card. So suppose out of 100, how many do you think said yes, they had the card? Majority?
80.
80 said yes. So that's your number one finding, that 80 people out of 100 people you surveyed said yes, they have the card. And then out of these 80, around how many said that they didn't get access to the scheme, couldn't access it? Just give
40
me
to 50 members.
40 to 50. Right. So that's the majority out of 80. Majority said So out of 100, majority have the card, and out of the people who have the card, majority said that they aren't able to access it. So that's a really crucial finding that you have found, that so many people have the card, and despite having the card, they can't access it, right? So this is how you present it. This is a very nice finding, and you can simply present it. So did you ask them, have they benefited? Okay, 50 people said no, but out of the 20 people who said yes, they did access the card, um, did they say that they benefited?
Yes, ma'am. They said mainly during the times of pregnancy, they used this Arogyasri card, and during bypass surgeries.
Okay, so
And
some did benefit.
yes, ma'am, they got benefited.
Okay, so this again becomes an important finding, that if they use the card, they did benefit out of it. Okay, thank you, Reshma.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
So actually, when they're going for the data collection, what they did is they usually record it, whatever they're saying. If some will oppose that, right? In such case, they can follow any something, the document they can immediately write or something. Is something like that any which you will suggest?
Oh, are you saying if they oppose to audio recording the call, can they, how else can they note down the information?
Exactly.
Right. So usually when we do surveys, we have a questionnaire and we ask their consent for audio recording. And if they refuse audio recording, but they're answering a question, which means they've answered the question. So you write down that in front of them, because that they have permitted for. They just don't want their data to be audio recorded. So it is ethical to write the answer down for whatever they have said.
So what I'm asking is, they tell, while asking, and they'll tell so many things. We can't able to write everything. So is there any format, something like we can immediately the important things we can just put a tick mark or something like that?
Yes, good idea. So maybe before, when you are going to the field, you can have, when you are collecting qualitative data, the audio recording becomes important. But for the quantitative data, for the yes or no parts, you can previously have a questionnaire which says that do they have access to the scheme, and there are two options, yes or no. Did they benefit, yes or no, and some other questions, like you do one pilot study, you know what are the major things that they're going to say. So you make a questionnaire out of that, a very straightforward yes or no questionnaire. And once they're speaking, you just keep ticking those points. Okay. And also, after the point, you also become a little bit pro at note making. So you just write one word and one word yes, and those things. Then later you can just at the end of the day, you can highlight those and elucidate those and explain for your own convenience later. But yeah, having a questionnaire with a ticking format will really help, and you can have some major questions that you want to so when you are setting out to explore a scheme, you know some things that you really want to know. So those questions you should have, and those questions you take off, and then other things, other data that you're getting to know, those you can make small notes out of. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Yeah. And if anyone has any idea, or during this their field visit they use some other technique, please feel free to share with everyone.
I will just second you on that. So I think in a lot of cases when we are dealing with qualitative data, there are a lot of unexpected things which we cannot be prepared for, and the respondent is speaking and we have to take a note of this. So in most of the cases when they are not they are not okay with the audio recording, you try to take notes. Just make sure you do it in the same manner as you do in your classes. So when your professor is speaking and lecturing you on something, you are taking notes. So the main point which you keep in your mind while taking notes is, these notes will help me recall what happened in this conversation. So you don't necessarily need to write down everything word by word. You need to take out ideas and themes from what the respondent is saying. So you can definitely leave out parts which you think you will remember or are not of relevance. So if I'm speaking something, it can be probably clubbed down into 3 to 4 major bullet points. So that's what you should focus on. And it's your personal notes. No one is going to check for grammar or if you did not follow the exact punctuation, commas, everything. Just make sure you take the ideas and themes out of it. That's all.
Thank you.
Now we move to another part of primary source, how you can correlate your findings. So for example, here, if you see, there's an example of other 10 people who said no. For example, we take off if you're serving availability of water in a village, other 10 people who said no to having water availability issues. Who were these people? Were they from high income families? Were they residents who had a multi-village scheme supply which provides them with proper water pipeline channels? So what does that mean? So basically you want to correlate the information. If some people have said yes, but some people have said no, so what is different about these 10 people? Why have they said yes? What's the background of these 10 people? What were they from a different region than the other 20 people? Were their financial circumstances different? Was this under different I don't know, different panchayats, things like that. So when you correlate these things, these are, so now these are like small, because you have 100 data sample. Inside these 100 people, you want to correlate these small things of what can be, what can be the answer to people having said these. So these are some correlation tips you can use. Then here, same example that I had given before. In the village where 7 out of 10 women reported dropping out of school, did the local school have a toilet facility? So basically, when you are exploring a scheme, when you're exploring the healthcare scheme, so does that area have a government hospital in the locality? Is it near? Does it, like, when you want to access information, is the how often does the panchayat function? How often does the panchayat have meetings? So there can be other things that could link to the answer that you're getting from your respondents, and that could be valuable insight. So that's how you correlate your primary source information that you've collected. Okay, now we come to the secondary source, data that you are using that was collected by someone else. Here, so a lot of things about schemes is that the eligibility criteria, if they have, how much the government has spent on the bill, what is the exact order, all of these things, who are the target beneficiaries, all of these you can find when you read the scheme itself, when you go to the government website and look it up, when you look at a PRS website and see what the scheme. There are so many other websites who condense these things into shorter versions, which you don't have to read the entire ordinance. You can just see the condensed version of it. Make sure that it's a little bit of a legitimate website, because you don't want to go wrong there. But yeah, basically you can piece together what the scheme is supposed to be in a very convenient way by looking at the secondary sources. Because when you are going to a person and they are saying, no, I don't have access to the scheme, you can't possibly ask them what is the eligibility criteria of the scheme, because they wouldn't know that. So these things you have to do your background research, and also you can ask them the eligibility criteria and then match it with what the actual eligibility criteria is, and you can see that how many of them knew correctly that what the eligibility criteria is. So the secondary source basically becomes a sounding board for your primary information, and also a good way to collect background information and to see the implementation part of the scheme. So who does this scheme benefit? What benefits does it provide? All of this you can see through secondary sources. I'll come to one example of how you can use a secondary source to make your report richer. You can use case studies, court cases, incidents. So for example, yeah. So this is an example of a scheme. This is the Easement Act 1882 that says that landowners with the right to collect and dispose have the right to collect and dispose within his own limits all water under the land and on the surface. So basically, if I am a landowner and I own this part of the land, any water source under my land, any groundwater source, any tube well, everything is under me. I can use how much water I want. So this case came up when in Kerala district, there was this Plachimada Panchayat, which said that, which granted Coca-Cola, the company, access to this particular land, and then they observed that they were using excess water, and it was becoming a problem for the rest of the village, for the rest of the area. The water table, overall groundwater table was reducing. So then they went to the High Court and complained that this is what is happening, and the High Court then did say that yes, they're exploiting the nature, they're exploiting the water table. But then eventually, though, Coca-Cola appealed to the High Court again, and based on the appeal, the High Court gave Coca-Cola, the landowner, the verdict, the primacy, because there was no law that prohibits over extraction of water. There is no any law that says that no, you cannot extract water if it's not in your land, like that. So then Coca-Cola won. So this is a nice example of something. This is completely secondary data. Did not myself go to Kerala and collect it. This is something that came on the newspaper. This is something that I got access to from the High Court website, or what it said, and I can just nicely, if I'm talking about the Easement Act, nicely put this case study in as a nice example of what happened. And this elucidates you. Now you completely know what the Easement Act is once you've given this example, and this also points at a issue that has come up. This is an issue that was raised and what the citizens are facing. So you can complement your reports with these kind of case studies. So this is a function. This is a table where basically you don't have to go into the details of the table, but just the point of this table is wanting to show you that how you can classify how every government has every vertical. Government has numerous verticals, and as an education vertical, as a health vertical, as a foreign affairs vertical. So basically, this is a example of the state education functionary vertical, and here it says what are the different inside that vertical, what are the different verticals. So for example, there's one for rule making which lays down the rules of this is the qualification, this is the eligibility criteria. And there's the compliance, like who is going to go inspect that the rules are being met or not. Then there's enforcement, that who is enforcing that these rules are being met. Then there's service delivery, so hiring teachers, providing books. So basically point is that every vertical has all these different functionaries that are functioning, and all of them have different functions. So when you're looking at one particular scheme, you want to see which vertical it falls under. Is it a compliance scheme? Is it an enforcement scheme? If you set the health card, so it is, I think it will come under service delivery because everyone is being provided the health card, and then also the function of the health card comes under compliance to see is the compliance being met? Do they have access? That comes under compliance. So you can see who is checking the compliance of the health card, and then that becomes, if it is not accessible, that becomes a compliance level problem, because you said that 80 out of 100 had the health card. So service delivery is on point, but compliance is not. So that's how you can inside the vertical point to what is correct, what is wrong. And this makes a report also rich, that you know who is responsible. You can't just blame the government for everything. You can say that this particular vertical of and this particular function is not functioning properly. So this is the person responsible who should have acted better, or anything like that. Or this is the person who the service delivery of this function has been pretty good. So things like that you can help make your report richer. Okay. All right. Any questions at this point? Okay. At the end, we're going to have, I'm trying to go through it fast, so at the end we can have some time for interaction and get some time to talk about what you have found till now. All right. So now we come to the analysis part here. So analysis in a report. Now this part, some reports are pretty just till the findings part. That this is what we found. This were the key issues that were brought up. This is what the major highlights are, and that's the end of the report. But some reports may want analysis and recommendations. So I'm going to give you a few tips of how to go about looking at that. So what does this scheme do, right or wrong? So this you can so before wait, yeah, first we should look at this and then we'll come back to the analysis. Here is where to find what is actually going on. Right, so I think I mentioned this before when we talk about secondary sources and where to see what is going on. You can look at newspapers, you can look at op-eds come out in newspapers. Every leading newspaper has an op-ed section where like people from the field are talking about that thing. Just a simple Google search will come give you a number of opinions and polls. So what you have to do though is make sure that you read both sides of the argument. You can't just read one side and be completely convinced by it and write a report that is completely biased. You have to read both sides of it and then try to maintain a neutral stand. Like I think Siddharth said that what about the neutral and the positive and those stances. So your whole stance should be neutral, and then you are supposed to be presenting the perception that could be positive, that could be negative, and that some people said that they don't know what the thing is about, which also again comes under negative only, that they don't know. So you maintain a neutral stance and you, as a matter of fact, reveal that these are the things that I found in my primary information, and I found that secondary sources said that these were the things that came out to them. And you say all of it in a matter of fact way. You don't hold your individual opinion in this particular sense. But I mean, obviously, your individual you, when you are working so much on a scheme and you are looking at it, and you have also gone and checked the field, you will definitely have opinion, and you can't not have an opinion. So that will help you guide what you're writing, that this is what you've seen, but to also help form your opinion in an unbiased way, I would always recommend that you look at both the sides of the argument. All right. There's print and electronic media, there's events, roundtables, there are local events that are happening. Now you don't have to go to the local rally, but the fact that you know a local rally is happening to protest this particular issue means that something has happened, some issue has happened. So you can explore that. All local newspapers cover in detail why what is happening. So you have various sources to get a pulse on what is happening, and that's how you can place together your analysis part of it. Okay, this actually analysis findings kind of is merging in the report, because if the whole thing is a whole thing we want to present in an unbiased way, so analysis and finding kind of get clubbed where you are explaining both. All right. So, but your findings can be analytical, because first you're presenting the findings of what the accessibility of the scheme was, what the scheme, and then next you're moving to what the scheme did right or wrong according to people, according to opens, and then you come to does this scheme serve its purpose, where you are talking about what you saw, and then as well as what you have substantiated through everything that you've learned. So technically in a finding, while writing the findings, you are breaking them down into different paragraphs, and it is by itself getting analyzed, the whole report. All right. Okay. Also, big data that you can use to substantiate. There's census data, there is NFHS data. All of these data have and they have reports also. It's not just like numbers that you have to analyze. They give out comprehensive reports which you can find in their website itself, and they there's so many criterias, anemia level, BMI level of women in this particular district. They have district wise reports of district wise reports of different what the average is here. So it's very detailed report, and you can use that to substantiate your argument for a particular area. Okay. Okay, recommendations. This part also may not always be in a report, but if you want to provide a report with recommendations, here are a few pointers. So I covered this before also when we explored the scheme that was on the PRS website. Here you can see if the scheme has been, if there's a similar scheme nationally, internationally, um, in other states, and try to compare like what have they done differently. Is it better? Is the scheme in your state better? Things like that. You can have a comparison with 2 or 3 states. It like um, gives some richness to your report because you are giving them a context or a point of reference that this is a comparison, and comparison always helps people to compare and see which is better, which is not. And that's a good recommendation to have if there are things that you see are in other places and it would help for the population of this Andhra or any other state that you are exploring. Um, okay, what does it do differently? Yes, what I said, that how is it different? What are the best practices that the other schemes used and which you could also recommend for your report? What have the people recommended? There are obviously so many numerous policy websites and they keep publishing recommendations. You can always like take up recommendations, but one thing you also should use your discretion in is that recommendation in other state is depend based on the population and topography and everything, geography of that particular population. So when you recommend it for a different region, you need to keep those in mind and check if that stands for this particular area as well. All right. Um, are there better ways to facilitate access? This, when you conducted your own survey, you have found that out that these areas, these things, like they couldn't access the local government office. So does that mean, do we need work more to have more regular government offices and more better service delivery from that end? So these, some of these you can find, some of these come out of the findings that you yourself found, and basically what you recommend from what you saw in your personal primary source findings. Okay, so now any questions till here? There's another short section about how to write well, and then we'll come to your particular analysis and we can help you analyze according to what we explained so far. Any questions? Okay, we will ask questions separately when after the end of this section. All right. Okay. Organizing your content, I think we've elaborated on this a lot, but also again, just quickly briefing you through this, that the sentences, all your sentences should be pretty concise and clear. So one important thing is you write, you have done all your research, you've done all the hard work, and then people don't read what you have written because your sentences are too long and hard to, like, you're getting lost when you are reading it, then there's no point of doing all this research, right? So you want to have concise sentences. You want to explain your points pretty briefly and nicely. You want to bold the titles of your topic. You want to elaborate on things, but you want to keep it simple and precise and to the point. You don't want to go off topic. If your report is about this and you're talking about something very different, or writing, you've gone off on some other tangent, and that is good for your own information, but if things don't need, if the reader doesn't need to know, if that's not completely exactly pertaining to the scheme that you're writing, you don't need that. So that's a editing strategy that later when you are reading through it, you ask yourself, does the reader need to know this relevant to the scheme? If it's not, just cut it out, paste it somewhere else if you want to use it later, but cut it out from your report because you want to maintain it, the precision of it. All right. Paragraphs, we'll come to paragraph in the next slide. Sections, you want to, as I said, that you want to have one thought, one section. You want to divide the sections, paragraphs with under sections. Yes, like I think here we can cover what the Siddhartha's question was, that how do you present your findings? There's positive, there's negative, there are different types of findings. If you want to have a headline for each type of finding, and just to make your work easier, to make for your understanding also, that this is, I'm particularly right now talking about the implementation part of the scheme, not the eligibility, not the accessibility. I'm talking about the implementation part. So that's your heading, and here you write different, like what your finding was, what do you think that the implementation is going well, what other people think, like that. So here, that's how you divide. So either you can divide positive, negative, but also within sections you do that division, because you can't have all positives in under one section, then it is also confusing. You don't have space to explain, compare the positive as well as the negative. So, but up to you if you think that's a better way of presenting, where you want to have all the positives at once, and when you come into criticism, you want to have all the other criticisms at one place. It's completely up to you, your decision. So that's how you present it in different paragraphs. And the essential point of writing well is that one paragraph, one thought. Okay. So at the key point supporting the bottom line arranged into sections. So you've written the whole thing, everything's there, but there always has to be a conclusion where you conclude everything. Because majorly, I don't know if you do this, but I do it often. When I'm reading a paper, I'm reading a report, I'll browse through the introduction and I'll browse through the conclusion, and I know what this report is about. And so that's mainly what. And if your point is essentially you want people to know something, get something out of the report, you need to condense whatever you've written into your conclusion and give a concise, precise idea of the whole thing in your conclusion. To conclude, this is what we found, and that has to be pretty precise. Okay, so that's the bottom line. That bottom line, we saw we saw LHS, we saw RHS. LHS not equal to RHS, so this is what we found out. Okay, that's your conclusion. So bottom line, evidence, problem, benefits. So this also comes under, like, analysis can also be the whole thing where you're establishing it, and then the conclusion you condense the whole thing into. You don't have to mention everything that, because you've already mentioned it above. You can just condense it into conclusion. So this is a small few tips to how to organize your content, but feel free to like change it up and do it according to your convenience and how you want to present your story. Right, this, I think I spoke about this, one thought, one paragraph. So for example, also one paragraph, when you're writing about one particular thing, you want to follow a little bit of a, you just don't want to start midway that this thing, this person said this and now this is what is happening. You want to, when someone is reading a paragraph, they read the first sentence first. So you want to inform your reader that what this paragraph is going to contain. So, and then you further elaborate on it. So whenever in the starting of a paragraph, you have, let's look at this sentence. The Jal Jeevan Mission puts significant emphasis on community ownership of water. So this is, if this is the first sentence of a paragraph, you know what this paragraph is going to be about. Jal Jeevan Mission, that's the topic of the paragraph. And then what are you going to explain in this paragraph? That community ownership, how the JJM will emphasize on community ownership. Okay, so once you, so you basically know when you read the first line of the paragraph that this is what the paragraph is going to be about. And this helps when someone is reading, this helps you to write and form your opinions and thoughts and put it, like once you write the leading sentence, then you give some evidence, explain it a bit, and at the end you bring it down to so essentially, this is why the community ownership of water is important. So this, like, it becomes very convenient for you to write and as a reader to read what has been written. This will share this presentation with you. So these are some like words you can use when you are trying to join sentences, because it helps connect and it helps build these are some like cheat sheets to things you can use when you are using cause and effect. This happens, so accordingly this will happen, therefore, thus, or you want to emphasize on something, you can say in fact this is also something that's happening. So these are some nice words, nice roster of words that you can use. And I'm sure you already use them, but to have them in one place and just refer to if you want to find a synonym of a word, and this helps. Okay, so we're almost nearing the end of the tips, and that is the grammar part. Grammar, you really want to check your grammar. You want to proofread. There are so many numerous websites where you can see check your writing. There's Grammarly, which I don't know how many of you use Grammarly, but I always use Grammarly. If my spelling is wrong, Grammarly underlines it for me. If they think that my sentence is, and it's free, if they think my sentence is not working out, they'll like put a green underline. So it really, like, it's not too nice to become completely dependent on a writing check website, but it helps to keep your check on your writing and see if the sentences are flowing. Try to keep sentences short and crisp, and proofreading. This is extremely important. Many a times we just write the whole thing and we have a very nice, good feeling about it. Oh, what a nice essay I've written. And then you proofread and you find so many grammatical mistakes, or you proofread and you see that this is not making sense. This after this sentence, what is this? This does not lead to this. So that is why proofreading, reading it at least twice is extremely important. And then if you have the time, and I mean, I would recommend this really highly, that you get someone else to read this as well, because you have written the whole thing, so you are extremely biased towards your writing. You think that, oh, this is, because in your head it has made sense, so when you are reading it, you obviously think that, okay, this is how it's supposed to flow. But if a friend is reading and they're reading it for the first time, so they'll have an extreme objectivity. So I have like few friends who I always send everything I write to, and they like give a read through, put some comments, say that what do you mean by here, things like that. And then just once, because so many people are going to read it, right? So you want to have an objective opinion before you submit. That's a nice thing to have. Okay, fact check. This is also extremely important, because you're writing a report, which is you're writing a report for a party, and everyone needs to have their facts straight. You can't say wrong things, because then everything's on you. So you always cross check facts. You should check government data. Anything that the government data says is on an official government website, that is correct. That is what you have to follow. Like and people can say that these are biased, but for you as a writer, reporting and presenting government data, that's your prerogative. You have to that's the right data to present. You can, if there is some other external website or non-governmental website which is giving some different data to the government website, I would always recommend to go with the government website. You can critique what the scheme is, what the government is saying, but you should always use the data that the government is providing, because that is something that has to be, like, that is taken as legitimate in this sphere. That's the legitimate data that you should follow. Okay. Cross check quotes. If you are quoting someone, you should always go back and see if this is exactly what they said. You don't want to misquote anyone. And cite everything, like I said before, that it is ethically important that you cite. If you are looking from some other website, that you want to cite that, you want to cite all your sources. That is extremely important. Okay. All right. So now we come to this section where we are going to throw it out to you and help you make a outline of what you have written. And basically, so this will, because all of you are supposed to write a report, right? And if you, we can brainstorm it here. We can, everything that we will explain, let's see if I was able to explain properly, if we were able to present what we wanted to say. And let's see what you have. I'm also curious to know what you found out in the field, and let's try to present it in a report format and try to make an outline. We don't have to like give the answers. We can see what questions you want to ask here, what things you want to answer under different headlines. Okay, so I'll ask Fatin and Akhil to help me out here to interact with all of you. And if it's possible, can you all please switch on your cameras? That would really help. And any questions at this point? The first questions. If there has been any questions, can you please raise your hand, or don't even raise your hand, unmute yourself and ask away. Siddharth, have I answered your question?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Anyone else have any question? Okay, cool. So now we will ask questions. Shiv Kumari, I think, are you asking a question?
No, no, nothing.
Okay, yeah. Cool. So you guys have essentially worked on education and health, right? Any other topic anyone has worked in? Okay.
That's it, ma'am. Only education and health.
Education and health. And okay, who all worked on education? Can you raise your hands? Okay. Pravalika. Gayatri. Anyone else who worked on education? So, Niharika. Right. So, from what I understood, a few of you went to the field and the others like helped them.
Documented.
Okay, helped in the documentation. Have you already prepared the document, or is that yet to be done?
They were completed, ma'am.
Oh, document has been completed. Okay, so then this exercise will be more interesting because you've already done your documentation. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4 people who did education. Okay, you guys can keep your hands down. Who all did health? Can you raise your hands? Niharika, did you do health as well? Okay, Rishma did health. Niharika, I think you're on mute. I was asking if you did health as well as education.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Kalyani, are you answering for Niharika?
Actually, we are in one team, Ipshita.
Oh,
So we
you're all
did
together?
on both, everyone. Yeah.
Okay, are you all together right now?
No, no. We
Okay.
worked as a team. So
Okay, you all worked as
Urban team, ma'am. We worked urban area.
you worked in Acha, I understood. So it's not
Rural
health
area and
education,
urban
but
areas.
rural and urban. Got it. And both teams did health and education.
Yes, ma'am.
yes.
Oh, okay. Got it. Fine. So there's an urban team and a rural team. Okay, so then urban team, can you raise your hand?
Ma'am,
Yes.
Once again ask.
I said, can the people from the urban area team raise their hand? Okay. Pravalika, Gayatri, Shivkumari, Niharika. They are from the
Kalyani also, ma'am. Kalyani,
Kalyani.
Pravalika, Shivakumari, Shreya Chaudhary.
Shreya Chaudhary, Gayatri and Niharika.
Gayatri, yes, ma'am.
Yes, and Niharika as well.
Yes, ma'am. Niharika also urban team.
Okay, and the rural area team? Can someone just unmute themselves and give out who were in the rural team?
Me, Reshma.
Reshma?
I don't think anyone joined from rural teams.
Okay. Jeevana, which team are you in?
Rural team, ma'am.
Okay, Jeevana is rural team.
I'll send
Jeevana
you.
is actually team lead.
Okay.
She didn't participated in survey. She's our team lead, a
Acha.
senior.
Okay. Got it. Thanks. Siddharth, are you in any team?
No, he's the lead actually.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know.
It's okay.
Okay, so all the participants who are here are Pravalika Gayatri, Niharika, Shivakumari, Kalyani, and Shreya and Reshma. These are the participants, right?
Yes, Ipshita.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Not missed anyone. Cool. Okay, so we will just throw out some. So there's a outline structure. Okay, let me present my screen. Yes, so this is like a rough outline that we have prepared and you could use as well as a template. And now let's like see what you guys have found out, and in your reports, have you included these things or not? Okay, so let's say we'll ask both teams what they found. So let's say about the background. So urban team, can anyone say what the background of the schemes you were exploring is? Which schemes did you essentially explore, and do they have any background? Was there any issue that had come up that led you to explore that particular scheme? Anything?
Basically, Amavadi and educational schemes and the health, both the schemes they had covered. The thing we didn't document, we had separately documented the background. That means what are the schemes, what is under the schemes. That's we just made a document on that. But
Okay.
the main document, the report which we made, we didn't include that background things.
Okay, so you didn't include the background in the report. Okay, can you just give me an outline, like give an outline of the report that you guys made?
We just gave like what's the area they had gone and how many households are there and the particular household name.
Probably
how
if I
many-
can share the screen and show you,
Yes.
ma'am.
Yes, that would be great. Okay, go ahead.
that would be better.
Actually, I can't share the screen because the host is restricted.
Ishita, if possible, can you share the host access? Can you transfer the host access to Pravalika?
Actually, I don't have document. I'm not that. I didn't.
Who did I give
Those
host access?
Gayatri.
Gayatri, those people have done who
Okay.
were involved in documentation. They only have the documentation. Actually, I went for survey. I don't know who's
Ma'am, probably
under
I can just share the
Yes,
Google
that
Drive
says
link.
I've given you the host access.
I think you are on mute, Ishita. Are you trying to say something?
Yes, sorry. Right, so we have area fieldwork documentation. On the first day, we went to, we also see the, got it. So this is basically you're trying to, you've reported the things that you did, like day to day, how many people. Okay. I would suggest, okay, can you come to cluster 9? That part, scroller, that's visible. No, above. Okay. So here, in this part, essentially, I've tried to explain the areas you have gone to. I think here you don't need to mention which day or which, like this can be for your own reference, but a clear, you want to essentially say what this, I think this would fit into what your sample is. So you say total 1650 households, every cluster is 110 households, and you give which area this is, and maybe if you have the information of what the income bracket was of these people and how many of them were women and how many men and what the age group was, those things you can put under this, and this would be a nice section to explain the sample that you have collected. Okay. Okay, you can scroll down.
So basically, we had two kinds of information that we had from the people, and second one was from the volunteers. So here, as I have enlisted over here, these were the information from the volunteers, as in the schemes and the respective beneficiaries. So I have listed out all the schemes. Like these were the basic schemes that we have listed out. And for each cluster, we have given out all the names that the volunteers had with them. So that this is what it is. And then after this, on the next day, like Kalyani has done this. So she has given out the person's name, all the details that we have collected. This is the overall way that we have done. These are the subheadings that we have had. And we have repeated this for all the people that we have done. So we have enlisted out this.
Great. Got it. So basically, you have technically coded the data here. You have, given the names, number of family members, all of this. Now, what I would suggest is for you to generate like a comprehensive report, because not everyone can go, and everyone, even if they go through each of the family member and household data, they wouldn't know what essentially the popular opinion is. So what you can do is make an Excel sheet, create whatever these highlights you have, name, family, name you don't need, number of family members. So that can be for each household, you write what the number of family members is. And for now, you can keep the names for your reference, but later you don't give out the names in the report. And then you can take out the average. So you can see what was the average family size. In school also, yeah, there's so much data here. School, what school they went to. So you can make it as private or public for all of them. And not then scheme not eligible. So you can have different columns for different schemes and tick like yes, no, you can write for each scheme. So then at the end of it, you'll get a total of how many people were eligible, how many were not. Because you don't want to like go through this document and every time count 1, 2, 3, 4. If you have an Excel sheet, you can nicely have them all there and it will be easier to total it. Okay, outcome. Yes, outcome also you can have a number of columns for outcomes, that is the student a dropout. Yeah, so I think you've very well coded the data. You just need for your convenience, you can put it in an Excel sheet and try to analyze it, and you can have the number of people who said yes, who said no. Okay. Is this the report that you were talking about? Have you guys written what you were saying? You wrote background somewhere else?
No. This is the one that we have written. It is like we have allotted each day. One of us have been documenting it. So
This
one
is
of the days I have
Can
done.
you go up once? I saw some Anganwadi data.